Gerald R. Ford, USS. What a place. It's almost.
When Elon Musk stepped forward to discuss what the United States Navy had just accomplished, the room shifted with attention. It wasn't another talk about rockets, satellites, or electric cars. It was something altogether different. Something steeped in the legacy of sea power and the sheer dominance of naval engineering. According to Musk, the Navy had successfully unveiled an aircraft carrier so advanced in its design and operational capabilities that it defied the traditional limitations of naval warfare. The claim itself reverberated like a shockwave. Aircraft carriers have long stood as floating fortresses of power projection, but now, the suggestion was that one had been built with such futuristic precision and resilience that it could not be stopped. The very thought of such a vessel entering service sent ripples of awe and apprehension across both military and civilian minds alike. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. This carrier, by Musk's account, represented a pinnacle of engineering. Carriers traditionally serve as symbols of influence, able to extend the reach of air power anywhere across the globe. They are floating cities, with thousands of crew members, dozens of aircraft, and enough infrastructure to run continuous operations for months at a time. What the Navy had now achieved, however, was something that elevated the concept of an aircraft carrier into an entirely new dimension. Musk hinted at levels of automation that reduced the need for massive human contingents, as well as propulsion systems that stretched endurance beyond conventional limits. If traditional carriers were vulnerable to missile strikes, torpedoes, or the complexities of logistics, this one had been conceived to neutralize those vulnerabilities one by one, turning it into a weapon system that could maintain superiority in virtually any environment. The strategic implications of such a revelation are impossible to ignore. For over a century, sea power has been measured by the size and strength of fleets, and particularly by the presence of carriers. The Second World War demonstrated how carriers could change the balance of entire campaigns, shifting the focus away from battleships. In the Cold War, carriers became the floating guardians of deterrence, extending the reach of American influence into every ocean. Now, with a carrier Musk suggested could not be stopped, the balance of power was being reshaped once again. Any adversary attempting to challenge U.S. naval dominance would have to contend with a vessel whose design philosophy removed the weaknesses that opponents had spent decades trying to exploit. Much of the excitement came from whispers about the carrier's defensive systems. Musk, though not going into granular technical details, alluded to layers of protection that went far beyond conventional missile interception. If modern carriers rely on a combination of radar, close-in weapon systems, and escort ships to form protective shields, this next-generation vessel appeared to integrate artificial intelligence into its defensive network. Imagine a carrier capable of reading and responding to threats faster than any human operator, predicting missile trajectories with machine learning precision, and deploying countermeasures in fractions of a second. Such autonomy would render saturation attacks, where multiple missiles are launched simultaneously in hopes of overwhelming defenses, largely ineffective. For militaries around the world, that prospect alone would trigger a fundamental recalculation of strategies. But defenses were only part of the story. Propulsion had always been a limiting factor in naval design. Nuclear-powered carriers provided endurance far beyond oil-driven ships, yet they still relied heavily on supply chains for aircraft fuel, spare parts, and provisions. What Musk described suggested advancements that might even reduce these logistical dependencies. Whether it was through revolutionary energy storage systems, hybridized propulsion linked with advanced nuclear cores, or sustainable onboard resource production, the new carrier represented a shift toward near self-sufficiency. The possibility of a carrier remaining on station indefinitely, without being tethered to vulnerable resupply lines, painted a picture of an almost mythical presence on the seas. Another feature that Musk's commentary brought to light was the degree of integration between the carrier and next-generation aircraft. Traditional carriers were designed around fixed-wing jets and helicopters, each with its requirements for catapults, arresting gear, and deck management. This vessel, however, seemed to embrace a future in which unmanned aircraft dominated the skies. Autonomous drones, hypersonic-capable strike platforms, and reconnaissance vehicles that never needed rest could all be launched and recovered seamlessly. By eliminating many of the constraints associated with human pilots, the carrier effectively became a node in a broader web of networked warfare, commanding an aerial force that never fatigued and rarely faltered. The scale of ambition behind this project also carried heavy symbolic weight. An aircraft carrier has never been just a ship. It has always been a message. When one sails into a region, it signals presence, resolve, and capability. With Musk drawing attention to this unstoppable marvel, the message was magnified to unprecedented levels. To allies, it offered reassurance that American sea power remained not only intact but unassailable. To adversaries, it delivered a stark warning. Attempts to challenge U.S. dominance on the seas were now even more futile than before. For smaller nations, it raised difficult questions about sovereignty and autonomy in a world where a single vessel could loom just beyond their waters, wielding capabilities they could not hope to match. Beyond the immediate military implications, there was also the broader context of technological progression. Musk's involvement in publicly highlighting the carrier underscored how blurred the lines had become between civilian innovation and military application. The technologies that might make such a carrier possible, artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, energy breakthroughs, were the same frontiers being pursued by private industry. The Navy's success suggested a level of collaboration, or at least inspiration, between the two realms. This intertwined future meant that the boundaries of warfare would increasingly mirror the rapid evolution of commercial technology, with consequences far beyond naval design. Yet it wasn't only about hard power. The carrier's very existence could reshape diplomatic interactions. Nations traditionally measure one another's strength in part by naval assets. When one country fields a vessel that seems beyond the reach of retaliation, it forces every other nation to rethink not just strategy but policy. Negotiations over territorial waters, freedom of navigation, and maritime law suddenly take place under the shadow of an unstoppable presence. The carrier becomes not only a weapon but a bargaining chip, a silent participant in every discussion where maritime influence is at stake. Critics, of course, would raise concerns about escalation. The logic of deterrence has always rested on balance, on the idea that no single weapon could dominate without inviting countermeasures. With this development, that balance seemed to have tilted. If one nation possessed a vessel immune to attack, it could tempt overconfidence, prompting actions that might otherwise be restrained. The very strength of the ship could paradoxically become a liability if it emboldened risky maneuvers. Yet from Musk's framing, the achievement was less about aggression and more about inevitability. The future of naval warfare, he suggested, demanded designs that transcended vulnerability. And this carrier was simply the first realization of that future. The psychological effect of unveiling such a project cannot be overstated. Militaries operate not only through force, but through perception. A fleet is feared not because of what it has done, but because of what it could do. By presenting the carrier as unstoppable, Musk was tapping into that psychology, amplifying its deterrent power before it even set sail. Adversaries might not know the full extent of its abilities, but the belief that it was invulnerable could be enough to alter their calculus. This blend of reality and perception is as powerful as any missile, shaping outcomes without a shot being fired. For the sailors who would one day serve aboard such a ship, the experience promised to be transformative. Traditional carriers are ecosystems of human labor, from deck crews to engineers to pilots. With automation reducing the burden of routine operations, personnel could be focused on higher-order tasks, strategy, and mission coordination. Living conditions might improve as well, with advanced environmental systems ensuring comfort in ways past generations could scarcely imagine. Serving on the unstoppable carrier would not only mean contributing to global security, but also witnessing firsthand the fusion of technology and sea power at its most advanced. From an engineering standpoint, the project highlighted the capacity of human ingenuity to tackle seemingly impossible challenges. Building a ship that could withstand modern threats required anticipating every conceivable vector of attack: missiles, submarines, cyber intrusion, and hardening the vessel against them all. It required breakthroughs in materials science, in power distribution, in sensor fusion, and in command architecture. Every innovation layered together created something greater than the sum of its parts. To describe it as unstoppable was not to suggest literal invincibility, but to acknowledge that the limits of naval warfare had been profoundly redefined. Even as Musk spoke, One could imagine shipyards bustling with this achievement, engineers walking the decks of a carrier unlike any seen before. Each weld and circuit represented a piece of the future embedded in steel and software. The scale of investment behind such a project must have been staggering, but so too was the return, a vessel that shifted the very axis of global military thought. When history looks back on the era, this carrier will stand as a marker of transition, much as dreadnoughts once did, or nuclear submarines later on. It is the embodiment of an idea that dominance at sea is not merely preserved but reinvented through relentless innovation. If you liked this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Elon Musk's reveal about the unstoppable US Navy carrier? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.